It is time to start weaving. So on your loom, we want you to go ahead and get a piece of tape and write your first name, your last name, your period, and your class assigned number. Go ahead and flip your loom over, and now we're going to use the thread that is on this to create your warp. Now, you're only given a certain amount and it exactly fits, so it's really important that you don't make knots extra big or anything like that. So, you are going to be tying a lot of knots for this project. So I'm going to use this bigger yarn just to show you how to tie a knot. You guys should already know how to tie knots. You tie your shoes, right? You take the end of a string, you make an X. See how I made a loop? I guess it's an X and an O. And then you take the tail of that X and you pull it through. That is how you make a knot. So the first thing you're gonna do is unroll a little bit of your string, your warp string. Try not to get it knotted up because you're not gonna get another one. And we're gonna start on the top left tab up here. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna stick the string in that tab and you're going to make a knot on this side. Try and use as little of the string as possible. So I'm gonna make my X and I'm gonna pull a little tail through, and because I like to make sure that I do it twice, so I make another X and I pull it through. And you're just gonna move that knot, if you can, sort of to the back, like so. And then just pull your string back like that. Okay, so we're gonna be going down with it. Now, something I need to tell you guys before you start weaving is you're probably gonna make a lot of mistakes with weaving. The important thing is that you identify the mistakes and you correct the work. Usually when people thread their warp, a lot of people make mistakes. They usually aren't going like 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3. And slowly the warp strings start to go sideways. So make sure that you're kind of counting in your head, okay, number 1 to number 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the bottom. Since I'm on the first tab up here, I'm going to go to the first tab down here. And I'm going to go into that tab. I'm going to go behind the back and up the second one. So when you look behind, it looks like the minus sign. It looks just like a little dash. So since I'm on the second one, I'm gonna go up. And now I've just completed the second row. It's nice and straight. It's parallel at the edge. Again, I'm going to wrap around, make sure that's nice and snug. I'm on the third one, so that means I'm gonna go down to the third one. All right, I got 2 3s. Again, wrap around. Make sure if your cardboard splits like that, just make sure that you go all the way around. And I'm just gonna do that for all 22 strings. Okay, so now I've gotten to the end. I have nowhere to go. I've made sure that I've hit it on my strings. I have 22 strings. So now what I need to do is I have a little bit too much string, so I'm going to cut a little bit of that off. See how I still have plenty though? And I'm going to make a very similar thing that I did to the first one over here. I'm going to go underneath my string and I'm going to make an X. See how I made that X? And I'm going to pull that tail through the circle and make a knot. And I'm going to do it one more time so I know it doesn't fall off. I'm going to make an X. I'm going to make a knot. And I know that that's really secure. I'm double checking it, and I'm just going to cut it off very close there. So now you have made a warp. It's time to move on to some weaving basics. So the first thing we're going to do is you guys are going to be getting a needle. Anytime that you're not using your needle, you're only going to be given one for this project, and if you have to use two, you'll get two, but you have to give it back because we don't have two for everybody. Make sure that you keep your needle threaded. Even when you are working on your whole entire project, you don't just want to like go like this. In the warp strings, kind of stick your needle in to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. If you just like put your needle on top, it like it just did, it's gonna fall off. So that's just a really important thing to do. So the first thing everybody's gonna do is they're gonna start with a plain weave right on the bottom. It allows us to have a really good base for our weaving and allows us to anchor our fringe later on when we do that. So we need to measure the thread. I recommend at least 4 rows of plain weave. Just for reference, 4 rows is only about 1/4 of an inch. So if you'd like to do a little bit more, I think that that's always a good option, maybe even 6 or 8. So how you measure your yarn is you want to, we're going all the way across. We're going from string 1 to string 22. So we just want to measure here, but we want to go a little outside of it because you want to leave room for knots on both the start and the finish, and you have to leave a little bit of clearance for going over and under each string. So a couple inches longer than what the board is. I want to do 6 rows. So I'm going to go like this, and then my other hand is going to pull that and go to the same spot. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to cut my string. And then what I'm going to do is with this string ball, this yarn ball, some of them are called yarn balls, some of them are called yarn skeins. I'm going to wrap the beginning around, even though this is kind of a messy wrapping. And do you see where that end is right there? I'm going to take a little piece of tape so it's easier for the next person to find. And I'm going to wrap that end and attach it to the rest of the yarn and then put it back in its assigned color. This will help all of us not run into like a ton of crazy yarn knots, which always happens with this project. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to thread the needle. So here's where it comes to a lot of knots for you, okay? So you're going to put the yarn through the eye of the needle. Sometimes it helps if you get it wet, but honestly, the eye is pretty large. So you can just kind of pinch the string and watch it go through like this. And give a couple inches, make your X. Pull the tail through the X, like so, like that. I like to make a double knot, so I make an X, pull it through. Then you're going to attach, and this is now called your weft because we're going to be weaving left and right with it. You're going to attach it to your warp string. I like to start on the right. Maybe you like to start on the left. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever you prefer. But on the very bottom right down here, I'm going to very nicely pull the string up, and I'm going to make an X like that and pull it through. Now on your weft, we don't want the knots to be totally noticeable. We want them to kind of blend in with our weaving. So on the actual weft that you're going to be threading and on the warp string, you just have to tie once and then cut very close, but you don't have to like get super, super close because part of this project is going to be the finishing touches, and we'll cut all these tails off later and glue them. We're just not going to do it when the process is going on. All right, so it's time to start our plain weave. The most basic idea of weaving is that you're weaving above and below, above and below. So what that means is the string's actually going to go on top of a warp string and under a warp string. So that's why our needle is so helpful, because it can guide and do this sort of a motion, almost as if you were making a wave. That's what's going to happen. I am going to be instructing it like this, flat against, well, a box, a Hogwarts box. But I find it best to hold my loom like kind of by my belly. I think that it's just easier to have your work closer to you. So what I'm going to do, since I'm already like on top of this string, I'm going to go under with my next one. So I'm going to go under. You can see I'm pulling on that string, but this string is very tough. I'm going to go over my next string. I'm going to go under. I'm going to go over. I'm going to go under. I'm going to go over. And usually that's as much as I can do. I can only go that far. So I kind of pull it through. Notice I'm not pulling it all the way through yet. Then I know I need to go over. Don't get tricked up with like going back to under. You got to make sure that you're always keeping track of your string. So I'm over, now I need to go under, over, under, over, under, over, over, under, and under. Sometimes your other hand can kind of help you out. And then over, under. So I'm all the way through. And what I'm going to do is one hand is going to very carefully pull the thread through. And I'm going to be keeping a close eye over here because I want my weaving to stay as straight as possible. Like this. So you guys can see I even went in a little bit on this red section and this orange section. I was pulling a little bit too tight. So then I got better as I moved to the top. It's really hard to fix your weaving if you pull really, really tight acrosswise. So make sure that when you're pulling your yarn through, you're kind of like Goldilocks. You're not pulling too hard. You see that? So what's happening is I'm pulling so hard that I'm pulling my 22nd warp string over to my 21st. We don't want that. So always check yourself when you're working on weaving. And then you're going to move those strings down. You can just take your fingers because your fingers just kind of roll that string down. And you just made a row. Woohoo! So now it's time to start a second row. So you're going to use the same string. And it's very important to pay attention if your string landed under or over. Because now I kind of have to like trap this string that's over here. So I went under on my last one, so I'm going to go over. Now, as I'm going on my second row, it's really, really important to make sure that I did the opposite at whatever the first row is. So if I went over, I better make sure that my second row is under. So I'm going to mess up on purpose. I'm going to show you guys what that looks like. I'm going to go under 2 of them. And then I'm going to go over. So you can see what that looks like. So that is obviously not right. It looks very loose. It looks very messy. So what you have to do is you have to like retrace your steps, okay? So I need to go under that string to fix it and pull my string through. And then, oh crap, I went under 2 strings in a row. So I need to go under those 2 strings and fix it. And then I need to recheck everything that I did here. Did I go right with these other ones? Yes. So then I can continue weaving. Remember, when you pull, not to pull too tight. You want the warp strings to stay where they're at. And then just put your row down. And now, just like you did over here, I went under, so I'm going to go over, under. And I'm just going to continue to weave until I have my string gone or I've hit the desired length that I would like. Okay, so now it's time to end my weft. I'm done weaving with this, so I can either undo this string, or what I like to do just to save time is just to cut the knot off, like so. And you're going to knot off. So I'm actually going to go underneath my string because I want to make like a circle that the... Like, if I just made a loop here, it wouldn't be attached to anything. So I want to make sure that I actually go, like, around my string. And then pull through. I'm going to kind of push that down and cut it pretty close to the knot. But again, I can glue that down later, just like that. Now it's time for me to switch yarn since I've ended the weft and I'm ready to move on to whatever I like to. So just like before, you're gonna
take your string and you're gonna measure out how much you want. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I only want a little bit of my next one, and I might actually start making a shape next or something, I don't know. But I want to start the same way that I started the pink. But I think I'm actually gonna start from the left this side. So if your edge is kind of fuzzy like that, just cut it off so you get like a nice clean edge. And again, you're gonna go underneath the warp string, and then make an X, and then pull through. Ta-da! Put the tail to the side. And then, just like before, thread your needle and you're ready to start weaving again. Now, when you start weaving again, you still, even though you're on a different weft, you're now on a blue weft, you still have to follow what was done before. So you can see on this pink string I went over, so I need to be under, over, under, over, under, over. Otherwise, you're going to get fabric that kind of falls apart, and we really don't want that. Ta-da!